Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Parenting Pickup, a podcast simply made to help families with trending topics and so much more. We are positive you will pick up tidbits of helpful tips, tricks, activities, and advice when listening to our podcast. I'm your host, Kara. Hello, everyone. We're excited to have Anna Paulson with us here today. Anna is an early childhood education and development advocate who works for Help Me Grow. Welcome, Anna.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, like you said, my name's Anna Paulson, and I have a good long history of working in early childhood special ed, early childhood education, and even deaf, hard of hearing education. So I come into this job with lots of passion and energy for supporting little ones and their growth process.
That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about Help Me Grow?
Yeah, of course. Help Me Grow is actually funded through the federal government and, of course, our state of Minnesota government legislature. But Help Me Grow is a logo or brand. It is a connection for parents and families to have somewhere to go with their questions and to feel confident in finding the answers through their school system. So Help Me Grow is the connection point between parents' questions and the school systems that can support their little ones grow.
That's wonderful. What a great resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question for you about milestones. I know Help Me Grow has a lot of information about developmental milestones. So can you just start by telling us what they are and then maybe give a few examples?
Sure. So we all know that no two children learn or grow in exactly the same way, but they do tend to develop in certain predictable ways. And the landmarks for those predictable ways are called milestones. And milestones help us to understand how a child is doing in a typical timeline of development. I'll give you some examples.
Great.
Even as early as the very first day a baby is born, they're already starting to show some signs of development in the way they move, in the way they communicate, and in the way they socialize. A newborn baby placed on its tummy can actually lift their head for a very few seconds, but they can do it. They have the strength to do that. They can communicate their needs by crying, and they can move their bodies to show you their feelings of security or comfort. Obviously, the one we know most is the crying, but interestingly to me is that a baby can see their parents or caregiver's face from 6 to 12 inches away, right away when they're born. So those little points of interest are called milestones.
That's great. That's really helpful to know that. I think they talk about that at well visits, or at least with my children, the pediatrician would talk about developmental milestones. So any more information you have would be great.
Oh yeah, one milestone that we really look for in early childhood education is the 3-month milestone. At 3 months, a baby might look into their caregiver's eyes and gaze lovingly. That's a point of bonding. That's a social cue. That's a cognitive cue. And so in a well-child visit, a pediatrician might look for that interaction between parent or caregiver and baby. If you do notice that your child is not holding a gaze or looking into your eye at 3 months, you would want to go back to your pediatrician and make note of that for them so that they could just double check and make sure that everything's still on track. By 6 months, your baby is really starting to move. That's when you see a baby rolling over in both directions. They begin maybe to sit up on their bottom with your help. That's when people start really enjoying the interactions with their baby because they're making little sounds like attempting to say mama or dada, or they might use a grandparent's, the name that your family has given to the grandparent, whether it be grandma or oma or yaya. They might try to say something like that to get that person's attention. They love to play peekaboo, and they definitely know familiar faces in their environment.
That's great. I remember peekaboo with my sons. It was so much fun, and that give and take, that kind of serve and return action is so much fun when you see them giggle with delight when you play peekaboo, and they're really making those connections is so much fun. So these milestones are really kind of important markers of what we should be looking for in our children.
Yeah, and I love it that they're surprised every time your hands go away from your face. They always seem so joyful and surprised. And so we do too. We mimic that back to them, and it becomes a really happy exchange, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward to at 9 months. You might see your baby start really creeping and crawling. Some babies creep backwards before they creep forwards, and some babies scooch on their rear instead of crawling like you might think, or that what we call the army crawl, where they pull themselves with their arms. But they start responding to their own name. They start looking when you call them, and they definitely start showing preference to their favorite toys. This is the age where they drop things from the high chair and watch where they go. I know that parents and caregivers love that stage where things start leaving that high chair tray and hitting the ground. I think puppies like that the best, actually.
Right, they get all the good, yummy food that is dropped on the floor from the high chair.
Exactly. They get to scoop it up. Yeah, we all have examples of that 9-month-old stage. It's just a real favorite. So let's see. At 9 months, I want to add that this is when a baby might also pull themselves to a stand and start cruising along furniture. That's what we call it, cruising. That's a time when parents should really make sure that their outlets are covered and that their furniture is safe and doesn't tip, and that they don't have little chokers on the floor, little tiny toys that a baby might get and put into their mouth. So 9 months is definitely a time where parents should pause and go, what are the safety things in my house that I need to consider?
I think that's really good advice. I feel like it's in your own home and then when you visit others. I feel like as a mom, I did a lot of that kind of safety proofing, but then we'd go to grandma's and on the end table would be like a really expensive trinket that
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, like please be careful. And I think that happens a lot. So that's really good advice to start thinking about, is the furniture secure and are things moved? Because there are sometimes little trinkets or little things that would go right into their mouth. So that's wonderful advice, Anna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure, at 9 months. And then we're going to fast forward to that first year birthday when they start taking their first steps. And that's when they actually do wave bye-bye. I know we sometimes grab a baby's hand and wave the hand bye-bye. But about 12 months is when they might do it on their own. They also might start crying when their favorite someone leaves the room. So for the child care providers in the listening, you might realize that at that 1 year mark, they start really crying for the parent or the person that's dropping them off. This is the age when babies like to put things in and out of containers. That's that stacking age. And they also start recognizing the purpose in the everyday tools. So if you have a little hairbrush sitting there, they might actually pick it up and comb their hair with it. They might recognize that hairbrush is for brushing hair. Or a spoon, they might actually pretend to use that spoon by putting it in their mouth. So that's the 1-year-old baby. At 18 months, that baby is really going to take off. Now they're moving, and now so are you. You're chasing them because they might be able to go up and upstairs at this point. Maybe not quite ready for down the stairs. So this is when all caregivers are at their height of movement. They walk alone, they take steps alone, and they sometimes start speaking 1 to 3 words consistently. They like to say things like ball, or they like to point at a new friend, maybe their name. They like to point at the caregiver, especially the child care provider who they like the best, and maybe yell their name out to get their attention. 18-month-olds are so funny. They can also follow maybe a 1-step direction, like sit down, please. They might actually know what that means and actually sit right down for you, and then they might not. We don't know for sure. You probably have lots of examples of an 18-month-old.
Absolutely. Yes. I feel like that age when they move that much is a total game changer because you as a parent, they're just always on the go. There's no more set them on the floor in the living room and quick run to the kitchen because they will no longer be back in the living room when you get back to it. They've already moved.
That's a really good point. You have to keep your eyes on them at all times when they're 18 months. So on the Help Me Grow website, helpmegrowmn.org, we have all the developmental milestones listed. And at each place, there's a little video clip of what that milestone might look like. We also have them in all the different languages, not all the different languages, excuse me. in other languages that are prominent in Minnesota. We have the milestone pages in Spanish, in Somali, and in Hmong, and the video clips are in that language. So hopefully parents can find what they're looking for if they have questions by going to the website and looking for that video clip or reading what we have written about each milestone.
I think that's so helpful because as parents, I feel like we want to know, is my child on track? Are they not? And sometimes you don't mean to, but you'll compare your child to a child you see in childcare or a friend's child and think, oh my gosh, wait a minute, their child is crawling. My child is not doing that. Mine is only scooting backwards. And I think as parents, we start to worry. So I feel like the milestones are helpful to realize that it's just kind of a window. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, you're right. It's not an exact time or date that it has to happen, but it's within a month or 6 weeks of what the milestone says. Then that's what we expect as, I'm going to put in air quotes, typical. You can also download from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, the Milestone Tracker app onto your smartphone, and the Tracker app will bing, it'll tell parents, oh, your baby must be 6 months by now. Perhaps they're sitting up on their own. So it's nice to have that little reminder app on your phone, hopefully to settle you, not to make you nervous.
Right. I think that is really helpful information to have because as parents, we tend to worry, is my child on target? Are they where they need to be? And so I think having the app or the tools from Help Me Grow are really a nice way to ease your mind and help you think these are things that may happen and should happen and will happen, and just kind of give you that pause to realize it'll happen and that what's on target and what isn't.
Right. Just knowledge is power. You know how they say.
Absolutely.
2-year-old stage, and everybody kind of calls the terrible twos, but I don't think so. I think that's when they really start communicating what they want and what they need. They can use 2- and 3-word sentences like get the ball or find my shoes. They can say take me out if they're in their crib. They also have what we call object permanence, which means that if you hide something, they will remember it's there and go back and get it. So 2-year-old is a fun little age. It's 3-year-olds that become so independent-minded. I can do it myself.
Absolutely. I remember that phase so well.
So well. They want to buckle themselves and tie their own shoes. But they're really starting to blossom into who they're going to be. They can pedal tricycles. They definitely can tell you their own name, and they might be able to follow that 2 to 3 part direction. Go to the closet and get your shoes and sit down. They might be able to do that. I'm sure in a childcare room, they know exactly how to go get their carpet square and sit in a circle. And this is the age where they like to color and draw and put easy puzzles together. So this is a pretty good age for maybe taking them to a restaurant.
Right, because they can sit for a while and attend and color and be busy while you're enjoying dinner.
You might just get through apps.
That's very true. That's very true.
But it's a smart way to start, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The social norms of being 3. Okay, at 4 years old, I love 4 years old. I love preschool age children because they can tell and retell a story and their imagination just explodes. Their language explodes. They're on the move, relatively independent, and they just have so much pretend play happening. If you have a pretend play corner in your home or in your childcare center, there's a good chance you're going to find a 4-year-old over there making something up that we can all learn from.
Yes, I always think it's fun to watch him take Legos and turn it into something that I would never think of. Like they have a Lego and it's now a car, and then it's an airplane, or it's a baby doll. Like it's just all these things,
anything.
and I look at it and think, I see a Lego, but you see endless possibilities.
Exactly. Totally blow up our little brains. Age 5, they're preschoolers, and now they're school-age babies. At age 5, they can count to 10. They know the concept of time. We're leaving in 5 minutes actually means something to them. They can hop on one foot and do somersaults. And just to hit this milestone hard, they should be understandable. In other words, somebody who might not know your child should be able to have a little conversation with them and understand what your child is saying. maybe one of the milestones isn't quite coming along and they would like to make sure that that child continues to grow and prepare for kindergarten, I would encourage them to call Help Me Grow. The lines are all translated. You could get any language you want, or go to helpmegrowminnesota.com, helpmegrowmn.com, and refer a child for a screening.
Sure. And tell us a little bit more of what a screening is.
Yeah, a screening, a developmental screening, it's a conversation that a school district professional will have with the parent, and they will review the questions from the Ages and Stages questionnaire. So it is literally a conversation where the parent does some checking and the school professional does some checking to be sure that the child is meeting the milestones and staying on track. If after that conversation, the parent and the professional decide that they need to know a little bit more, they want a little bit more of an in-depth view, they will consider which area of development the parent has concerns about. They might bring in some more professionals from the school district, and they'll do a deep dive evaluation to be sure that the child is continuing to develop. Some children slow down for a while and then take a big leap. Some children actually stop. And when that development stops, that's when we have concerns.
Sure. So that could be the case, like as a parent, I'm concerned about my child's language development. I'm noticing with the milestones that my child isn't using as many sentences as it's saying, or others can't comprehend what they're saying. That would be a time to maybe request a screening to have that check-in.
Absolutely. Or if they feel like the behavior is different, the child might not be playing side by side with other children or might not start socializing with other children, they might want to call and just get a screening. First of all, like I said, to just relieve them of any questions they might have, but also to ensure that the family and the child have the supports they need to continue to move forward.
Absolutely. I think it's nice because as a parent, it gives you that peace of mind. You have experts. It's not you as a parent guessing. Is this on target? Is it not? You can just have experts look at it and say, like, rest assured, everything's fine. Yes. There's, everything looks good. They're still growing, versus saying, like, you know what, actually some extra supports would be beneficial.
Yes, peace of mind. That's exactly the right way to say it. So if there is some concern after the screening, then all 5 developmental areas will be reviewed. That's cognitive, or the baby's thinking skills, physical, movements, communication, which is speaking, listening, and understanding, social emotional, which is behavior and interactions with others, and adapting, which is starting to learn how to feed themselves and dress themselves and function in their home. So if that evaluation shows that the child and the family would benefit from services, then the school district will offer services that exactly fit what the child and family need. It is not a one-size-fits-all deal. It is what exactly does your child, what exactly does your whole family need to ensure that the child continues to grow and to prepare for life beyond.
That's wonderful. It's nice to hear that it's kind of individualized, that it's not like all children that seem to have a delayed speech, for example, get this program. It really is looking at that individual child and that family and what supports do they need. I think that's just incredible.
It is. It's a highlight for sure. So if the evaluation shows that the child does not need services, we don't want to just say, okay, bye. We want to make sure that that family continues to feel supported and continues to feel like they're connected to the supports that they might need later on. Maybe they still have concerns in a year and they want to do this again. In the meantime, we like to connect them to other resources. One specific one comes to mind called the Follow Along program. That's through the Department of Health, and the Department of Health will send the parents monthly check-ins to make sure that the child continues to make those little tiny steps toward who they'll become. There's also early childhood family ed. There's Head Start, early Head Start. So there's lots of Minnesota programs that continue to hold up the family as they work to support their child.
I think that's really incredible, because I feel like as a parent, I really like that you're saying, like, it's not like everything's fine, you're on your own, hopefully it's all well and good, there really are resources available to help the families support their child as they grow and develop to their kind of full potential. And it's nice to know there's so many different resources, which is wonderful. You mentioned a wide variety of free resources. Can you go into a little more depth of what type of resources are available?
Yes, and I want to add to that the free resources are not dependent on citizenship. They are free regardless of citizen status here in the United States, because school districts are considered a safe harbor for all children and families. Regardless of your income level or immigration status, federal and state law protects children to ensure that all children have what's necessary for that solid start. So I recently had an opportunity to interview a couple parents. One of them was Marco, and he is a parent of a beautiful little girl. And when I was interviewing him about his experiences with Help Me Grow, the connection to his school district, he said, one thing I had never thought of, not coming from the United States, but being from Mexico, one thing I didn't think of is how would the school district support my child before the age of 5? And would it cost us anything? What would the expense be? And it was just so refreshing to be able to say it's all free. And from the time a baby is born in the United States, there are supports and services to make sure that they reach their educational innate potential.
That's really wonderful. I feel like that's probably the parent was so happy to learn that. And it's really nice to know that these resources are available to all children, all families, regardless of income or any other type of status. And I really like that the goal is to set children on a path for success at an early age, because we all know that, birth to age 5 are the most important years for brain development. And so not having those type of resources could have so many negative repercussions. So it's
Absolutely.
great to hear that there's supports available, and that basically all a parent has to do is look at the website or ask.
Yeah, absolutely. The school district is available to them, and it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from.
That's really so lovely to hear. I do have a question about a child. So let's say there's a child who is 2 years old, and they are kind of struggling to learn vocabulary and are not meeting those kind of developmental milestones that were mentioned on the Help Me Grow website or on the CDC information. What would a parent do?
That's a good question, because I think that language development is the piece that we all look for and celebrate as they start learning new words and putting sentences together. Language doesn't develop in a vacuum, of course. Each of these milestones is a step to a full staircase. So even if your child is not at the age where they might respond, they are taking in language, information, communication from your tone of voice, from the things you point at as you're talking to them. So any input, even for a baby that's a newborn, anything you talk to them about, oh my goodness, it's 5 o'clock already. I'm gonna go make some dinner. I didn't even thaw anything out. What do you think we should make tonight? Even that self-talk that sometimes we do in our heads, if parents or caregivers can do that out loud, the baby's brain synapses are starting to connect and starting to wire themselves and categorize information and make sense of the world as they listen and learn. So from newborn on up, parents feeding the child language. If the child is deaf, feeding them sign language, signs or ASL. If the child is hearing, feeding them with their voice in that form of communication, then the child will start picking up and making those connections and linking words to what they see as the item being talked about or the action being considered.
That's great. I mean, basically what I hear you saying is talking is learning. And when they're really young, kind of being like the color commentator for a football game or a sporting event, that you just kind of talk about what you see and what you're doing. And through that simple act, I can help a child develop their language skills. It's not expensive equipment that I'm buying or fancy
Absolutely
anything.
not.
It's just simply talking and interacting.
And being present. And I'll put in a little plug for Reach Out and Read, because of many pediatricians give out books even to families with newborns, because sitting and cuddling and reading is also a great way to ignite language development.
Right, not to mention fun. That was my
yeah.
favorite thing, cuddling with my sons when they're little in my lap, just reading. I feel like there's so many benefits just building that relationship and then building all those language skills.
Oh, absolutely. It's a treasure for sure.
Absolutely, that's great. So let me ask you a few things about, on kind of a statewide level and an individual level, what is the referral process like?
So the referral process through Help Me Grow Minnesota is much more simple, I think, than people might, and not than I would consider if I was thinking about referring my baby. First of all, the word refer sounds really medical, and it's really not a referral, it's a connection. If you go to helpmegrowmn.org and click the button that actually says refer, you get to a form, and the form asks questions about the child's name, their date of birth, what concerns you have about your child. And then that information only goes to the Minnesota Department of Education. And there are only 2 people at that department that are going to really look at that referral form. You don't need to be worried that that information is going to go any further than the Department of Ed, one small section. Those intake people have 24 hours to connect the child and family to their local school district, the school district where the child lives. And then within a week, the school district should contact the family and ask to set up a time to have a conversation and to do that initial screening. So I might add that it's a little different for babies who are birthed to age 2 and different for children that are age 3 to age 5. And that's legal implications, but for a parent, if your child is between birth and 2 and you click refer or work on that connection, the school district has 45 days. Weekends, holidays, they all count within that 45-day timeline for the school district to complete the conversation with the parent, the screening, if agreed upon, an evaluation, and to propose an individual plan that the parents work together with the school to develop. If the child is age 3 to 5, then we're on a school age timeline. So if you refer the child in June, you might not hear from the school district until September because they're on a school age timeline. That said, the school district, once they receive that call, they only have 30 days to make sure that the child has the services that the family has agreed upon.
That's great. It's nice to hear that, when you make this referral, I love that you called it a connection. That makes it so much easier as a parent. You're just connecting with experts to say, I just need some experts to take a peek and see how my child is doing and provide me with resources. And it's really nice to hear, too, that it's time-bound, that I'm not making referral and 2 years later, when it could be too late, if there is kind of an area of opportunity or an issue with the child, that it's time-bound so that parents get kind of a nice, ready response, and then they would get an individualized plan for their child, which is just wonderful to hear.
I might add that connection from the school to the parent is a telephone call. And so we've had some parents concerned that they haven't heard from the school, but many of us don't pick up a phone call if we don't know the number. So once you do refer or connect, be ready. You might get a phone call that is the phone call that you need in order to keep the process going.
That's a helpful reminder because you're right. I never answer a call of a number I do not recognize. So it's really nice to know that there's a phone call that starts that connection process.
Yeah, thank you. I like that you said there's a window of opportunity. That's exactly what it is.
Yes, that's great. That's great. Well, we're kind of at the time in the podcast where we have listeners who reached out with questions. So we have a question from Jerry who said, "It has come to my attention that my daughter, who is 5, is not where she should be developmentally. Every child is different in their growth stages, so what steps should I take to ensure she's on track?"
Well, thanks, Jerry, for that conversation. Of course, as somebody in the field of child development, I would ask exactly which areas you're concerned about, whether it be thinking, playing, talking, which area concerns you. And of course, by age 5, we already have the school district involved. If the child is in kindergarten, then I would recommend that you go directly to your school, because Help Me Grow is the connection to that school. So you would go directly to the child's teacher, or even if you don't feel comfortable with that, you could go to the school psychologist and say, I would like you to do a quick review on my child's development to make sure that they continue to grow as they should be.
I feel like it's really helpful for parents to know it's just that simple. You just go to your child's school, say, I have a concern about this, and the school will kind of move into action to offer that support. So it's as simple as, I think this is a challenge, I ask the question, and then the school will kind of take it from there.
They should take it from there, always with the guidance and the advice and the approval of the caretaker.
Sure, that's great. We have another question that came in from a listener. Amir shared, all my children have been great when it comes to their milestones, but my youngest, who is 2, still doesn't talk. Is it because the older siblings, or should I be concerned?
So the question is that 2-year-old depending on the older ones to talk for him or her, and will that change? I think it's a really good question at age 2. If you haven't heard any words of their own and you haven't really seen the development that you've seen with your other children, you might want to take notice for at least a month before making that referral. I never say wait and see. I would prefer nobody waited to see. But if you have an inkling that the older siblings are maybe taking over and saying all the words that the 2-year-old might need to say, you might ask the older ones to allow that baby to ask for what they need. So just have them hold, maybe give them a little signal of just kind of hold up what you want to say and let this little one have a chance. Or when you're having lunch, when you're having dinner, you might play that back and forth game with, do you want juice or milk? Long pause with the hope that the 2-year-old will ask for one or the other. If that really doesn't seem to be triggering language development, then I would absolutely refer. Nothing can be wrong with referring, having that screening, and potentially having that support system in your home.
Absolutely. I think that support system is what helps children kind of grow to their fullest potential. And I think as parents, we really appreciate the expertise of individuals in the school district to be able to help us when we have questions or concerns.
Absolutely. I mean, we should for sure in this podcast offer a huge shout out to the child care providers, the medical personnel, the parents, the family members, the friends, all the people who hold up that child as they go through their growth. Those first years, you know what they say, the days are long, but the years are short. And there's something so true about that. These years go quickly. And so for all the people that really influence the child's development, can't say enough about them.
I agree. It's huge. Our final question from a parent named Brad, he asked, is it best to just wait and see if my child works through a concern, whether it's language or socialization? Should I wait and see, or should I do it as soon as possible? What's the best way to handle that?
Well, research speaks to it, parents speak to it, anecdotal stories tell it. The best thing you can do for your child is act early. And there's an initiative through the CDC called Learn the Signs, Act Early, because acting early can either completely negate the chances that child will need special help later in life, or it will minimize the need for special services later in life. So the earlier the child has support services and the opportunity to jump back on track, the more chance the child has of reaching their full potential.
Get the support, and then they won't need those services later. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Anna, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been just wonderful. You've shared a plethora of information that will help support families. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for welcoming me to this podcast.
Yes, we're so happy you're here. And listeners, if you have any questions regarding today's episodes, email us at parentingpickup@nhacademy.net.